I would like to share with you my interpretation of The Little Mermaid, the Disney film, which is basically the story of a Cuban girl who falls in love with an American guy, in my interpretation. And I'm going to explain why. But before I do that, I would like to say a couple of things. The first thing is that a work of art, and in my view, The Little Mermaid is a work of art. So a work of art can be interpreted at different levels. Like if it's a movie, like The Little Mermaid, it could be interpreted at the basic level, the story, a little mermaid who falls in love with the prince, but it could also be interpreted at different levels, like metaphors, symbols, allegories. Regardless of if the authors intended to embed those symbols in the work of art or not, regardless of that, a work of art lends itself to those types of interpretations. The second thing I would like to say is that a metaphor or a symbol in art is a lot like an equation in mathematics. Like in mathematics, we could say x equals a plus b plus c divided by d, for instance. So a symbol works a lot like that, except that in literature, instead of saying this equals that, we say this represents this, or this symbolizes that. So it is from that type of structure that I'm going to be analyzing The Little Mermaid. So the first thing is this. The Little Mermaid, Ariel, is a mermaid, of course, and she lives under the sea, like mermaids do, in this mythical world. And so living under the sea means that she is, or she lives, in a world that is immersed in water. So immersed in water could be analogized to a world that is surrounded by water, an island. So that's the first thing. But it's not just one thing, it's several variables. The second thing is that Ariel's father is a king. She's a princess. So her father is a king who is, authoritative, has a potent voice, and has a long beard. And one of the rules he has for his kingdom is that nobody is allowed to get out of under the sea. The merfolks are not allowed to leave this world. So we're getting closer. He's authoritative, has a potent voice, a long beard, and doesn't let anyone get out of his kingdom. So that's another thing. So this king, King Triton, has an assistant of sorts who is also a musician, and he is a crab. So this crab is the court's counselor and composer. His name is Sebastian. Well, his name is actually Horatius, Thelonious, Ignatius, Crustaceus, Sebastian. They call him Sebastian for short. And this crab, Sebastian, has a Caribbean accent. Now, it's not really a Cuban accent. It sounds more like Jamaican or Trinidadian, but it is close enough. Geographic proximity is a very useful instrument for a successful allegory. Because another characteristic of a metaphor or an allegory is that metaphors are not a direct message. Metaphors insinuate rather than say. So a metaphor is more like a caress of the language rather than a direct message. So at some point, Ariel falls in love with a guy on land and she wants to go be with him. And Sebastian sings a song to try to persuade Ariel to not go to land, to stay under the sea. So in this interpretation, under the sea symbolizes Cuba and land symbolizes the United States, the land of the free. So Sebastian sings this song, beautiful song, Academy Award-winning song, and he says a lot of things in that song. So he says that the fish on land ain't happy. He says that they work and enslave all day. And then he says, the fish on the land ain't happy. They sad 'cause they in the bowl. So that could be interpreted like he's saying that on land, that people live in the bowl, meaning that they go from their houses to their cars, to their cubicles, and then repeat. It could be interpreted that way. And he basically says that, under the sea, everything is better. They have crustacean bands, and that life is the bubbles under the sea. Of course, Ariel doesn't care because she's in love. She wants to go be with the guy she loves and all that. But this song also has Caribbean melodies. So it sort of has like calypso Caribbean choreographies and rhythms. And we see a lot of fish in that song, in those choreographies. We see the newt, the carp, the plaice, the bass, the fluke, the trout, the sprat. But at some point, we see a fish that is dancing like this, and she has something on her head. And this fish is reminiscent of Carmen Miranda. Now, Carmen Miranda herself wasn't from Cuba because she's from Brazil, of Portuguese descent, but Carmen Miranda played a lot of roles of Cuban girls in Hollywood films, at least several roles. So every time people hear the name Carmen Miranda or see the image, they immediately associate Carmen Miranda with Cuba. So again, a Caribbean accent, Caribbean calypso choreographies, Carmen Miranda, several things that sort of, hint at that Caribbean Cuban analogy that I'm referring to. Now, at some point, something very important happens. So Ariel has sort of like an argument with her father because her father finds out that she's been going to the surface and she's been talking to the seagull, and he gets really, really upset. Well, he's actually worried. He's worried that something bad could happen to Ariel. And then she says that she wants to go, so they have an argument. And Ariel gets really upset and she leaves. And she goes to a cave with her best friend, like a grotto, a cave, with her best friend, Flounder, very cute fish. She goes to this cave. And when we see that cave has a lot of objects. These are objects that she has gathered from sunken ships. And she has all those objects there. And then she says, talking about her father, she says, if only I could make him understand that I don't see things the way he does. And then she says, and this is what jumped out at me, she says, I don't understand how a world that makes such wonderful things could be bad. This is very important because at this point, the writers have established that creating all those objects, meaning that creativity is a human attribute, a human faculty. They could have said that merfolks also create, but they very specifically chose to say that all these objects, that this creativity is a human characteristic, which is very important. And so she shows all these objects to Flounder. She doesn't really know what they are. She calls them gizmos and gadgets and who's-its and what's-its and thingamabobs. And she shows them to Flounder. But she says this, she says, looking around here, you'd think, sure, she's got everything. And then she says, but who cares? No big deal. I want more. Now, she doesn't say that she wants more thingamabobs. She says she wants more of something else, which she explains in the song. And so she says several things in this song. She says, I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing, walking around on those, what do you call them? Oh, feet. Then she says, flipping your fins, you don't get too far. Legs are required for jumping, dancing. And then she says that she wants to go up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, wandering free, wish I could be part of that world. So, from the perspective of this interpretation, legs and feet are not literal legs and feet. Legs and feet are a symbol. They are a symbol of the ability to stand up for what you believe, and also a symbol of the ability to roam around freely, which is a right that merfolks do not have. Then Ariel grabs a book from one of the shelves and she says, "Ready to know what the people know. Ask them my questions and get some answers." This could be interpreted like she's saying that on land, first of all, that reading and writing, and especially choosing what one wants to read, that is also a human characteristic, a human right. And then she says, "Ask him my questions and get some answers." That means, freedom of inquiry, freedom of speech, free press. And then she says, "Betcha on land they understand, bet they don't reprimand their daughters." What does it mean? Well, first of all, betcha, it means that she's not sure. She hasn't been there. She has like this intuitive sense. But also she's saying they don't reprimand their daughters, meaning that she has this intuitive sense that on land, they don't repress people. She's saying that, that on land, they don't have a system that is oppressive, like the system or the world of under the sea. Now, all these things are very important because at this point, the writers have also established that creativity, creating all these objects, that creativity and freedom of expression, freedom of speech, that those two are linked together, that one cannot exist without the other one. They're saying that creativity cannot blossom in societies that reprimand their daughters. It could be daughters, sons, meaning in societies that have oppressive systems. In those societies, the creative powers cannot blossom. They're saying that creativity needs the oxygen of land to exist, which is the oxygen of the freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And why are they choosing the analogy of merfolks as opposed to human beings? Well, in my interpretation is, because people or creatures who don't have the right to, freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and especially creatures that don't exercise their creative powers, they're not full human beings. They're just, they're half human, half fish. They're merfolks. They're flipping their fins through life. But in order to enjoy the full human experience, in order to be a full human being, we need to have freedom of expression, and we also need to exercise our creative powers. And it is also very important to notice that Ariel has had that intuitive sense just by looking at the objects. She has that intuitive sense that on land, I'm sure they don't reprimand their daughters. That's very clever of her to reach that conclusion, and that she also has reached all these conclusions even before she meets the prince. So before she falls in love with the prince, she first falls in love with the principles of land from the world where the prince comes. And then she says something very important when she's talking about the daughters of land. She says, and I quote, that they are bright young women, sick of swimming, ready to stand. This is a potential political activist. And these words, my dear friends, are the prelude of a powerful political manifesto in defense of democracy and freedom of expression. Do not let anyone persuade you that Ariel is shallow just because she's pretty, has a beautiful singing voice, and covers her breasts with purple seashells. No, no, no. Ariel is a profound thinker. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. There's one last thing I would like to talk about, and it is something that I don't think people have talked about, not to my knowledge. It is the potential obstacles that Eric and Ariel could have faced in the future of their relationship. You know, like if they made a sequel. Well, first of all, they are a delightful couple. You know, she's so pretty. He's so handsome. They're both very sweet. They love each other. I love the alliteration in their names, you know, Eric and Ariel, to symbolize that they are soulmates, even though they come from different worlds. So everything is beautiful. So I do believe that they were going to live happily ever after. But there's a couple of things there that could have turned into obstacles. So regarding Eric, like I said, very sweet, very handsome. But, you know, there's a character in the film. She's the witch. She's the evil character. She's an octopus. Her name is Ursula. And she wants to destroy the relationship between Eric and Ariel. She actually wants to destroy King Triton, but that's another story. The point is that when she tries to destroy the relationship between Eric and Ariel, she performs this, you know, magic spell, and she turns herself into a pretty girl. And then she uses Ariel's voice, and then she goes to land and hypnotizes Eric. So what does it mean? Well, first of all, they're saying she's an octopus, meaning she's somebody with tentacles, you know? And also the fact that they're saying that she hypnotizes Eric, that could be analogized to, you know, manipulating, that she manipulates Eric. So they're saying that even though Eric has strong muscles, they're saying that he has a weak mind because he allows pretty girls to hypnotize him, you know, to manipulate him. So that could have been a problem in the future. But like I said, other than that, he's adorable. Now, regarding Ariel, she's also very sweet. But when we're in the cave and we see all the objects that she has gathered, even though she makes it clear that she's in love with the principles and all that, yeah, that's all true. But still, that cave has way too many objects. So once she goes to land, she could become a shopaholic because she has already exhibited those tendencies, you know, the need to gather and accumulate a lot of objects. It's not something that cannot be addressed with therapy or with a 12-step program, but still she has to pay attention to those tendencies because that cave has way too many objects. It has shelves and shelves. I mean, that cave has more shelves than Walmart.